Okay. Looks like I'm just on time. I believe I'm on time. That's a good thing. Welcome to the stream. Dang it. Why does that thing keep popping up? Can I copy that to text? Let's go to, hold on a second. Moderation. I guess I didn't put a bunch of stuff. I was expecting that one thing to work. Paste. Oh, I didn't mean to copy the whole thing, but alright, whatever. Gibberish stuff should be gone. Control C. Control V. Paste. Okay. Adding some banned words that's supposed to be deleted out of the kick thing, but whatever. Just trash that. Okay, let's go back to social stream ninja. Okay, there we go. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome. And today we're continuing on working on the Quicksilver story arc, the thing that has to do with the slaves and the mines and all that jazz. Um, Now I have to remember where I was at, so we're gonna have to. Um, so Monday, March the 2nd, 2026. Where did I leave off? See where I left off, because I don't remember. I mean, I kind of remember. I think it were just that's right. Well, that's right. Beat 4 rolling means it's mostly exposition. Okay. You walked through all 4 beats and made these decisions. Beat 1, Roland searching for Hubert. Decision point, experience base. Beat 2, Bats in the Belfry Omnigate. Not a decision point, final puzzle piece, exposition beat. Beat 3, Roland and John to mines. Sir William. But only decision point, mainly to add pages, maintain player engagement, allow character expression. Beat 4, reaction cutscene only. Okay. You just introduced Chapter 14, clarified its structure, and paused before running the 7-step process. Okay, first, let me pull up chapter 14. I think I just merely modified where the one beat ended and the other started. That made more sense. Hold on a sec. Okay. Where is... Oh, I got another like, I think, on my... Got another positive reaction on my thing that I'm streaming. Here. Streaming now. Link in self promo. Enter. This is doing in a couple places here, and they do have a self promo. Okay, so anyways, okay. Okay, let's pull up the let's pull up the Quicksilver Chronicles text. Um, Here is the current version of chapter 14. And what do we got here? So if I can get through chapters 11, 12, and 14, even if it's just 11 and 12, I should be on time. Should say on schedule, as you people in the UK might pronounce it. Schedule. Okay. Incompetent failure. Roland and John sneak, succeed briefly, and get captured. And I'm gonna say they didn't actually fail. I'm saying it was part of the plan to get captured. He enters like like a magical Kool-Aid man. Oh yeah. That's a solid adventure pacing, and Indiana Jones would approve. Will and Sean go back, surprised and captured by gnomes. No regular agency needed. You already decided that. Snap. Snap's bonus will get rolling the hero flex before the rug pull. If you want flavor agency here later, it would live in how they sneak or how Roland frees the doors, not whether. Pressure resistance. John signals the doors overpower the guards. Explosion. Uh, um, Optional bonus. You want to tighten the flow just to here consider removing back of the mines entirely. Chronologically. Yeah. That's again, that was Where did I put back the mines? Crashed into the mines. The after they hear what sounds like an explosion. Now, this is going to be one of those ones where there's not any agency warranted in here. Well, none of the chapters are not going to have any decision points. However, because it's mostly reactionary, we might have to resort to only flavor, character, story, nuance. Okay. Okay. A little too effusive in its praise, though. Still, it's still too agreeable. You know, I don't want it to be like become like a jerk. Or become like a kind of a parody of itself or whatever, and just be like finding everything wrong. But at the same time, I don't want it to be like like a total yes man. We could dial back the personality a bit. The praise is a bit effusive, and I'd rather the conversation be more business oriented and less flowery, less praise, less jokes, a little more critical without being overly to, qualifying, judgmental. Hypercritical. Deeply life, but not a lot of joking and good praise. etc. So, yeah, you're not resorting your choices. You're deploying them exactly where they belong. It's a little bit too close. Obviously, I don't want you to be a jerk to me, but just a little more straight thorough. Okay, thanks. Actually, being critical, again, constructive criticism is actually necessary. I don't think my every idea is so great and will force me to think a bit more about my ideas. Especially the stories. Should exist only when they create tension, anticipation, interpretation, not just interaction. Okay. Player characters are not lesser, but they still must reveal something: character, tone, moral logic, or their noise. Okay, reaction-heavy chapters are the hardest to design well because of temptation, the manufacturer agency where none belongs. Sometimes restraint is better. Craft choice. When we resume with chapter 14, whenever you want to jump back in, I'll walk you through it with that lens and be explicit about where agency is genuinely absent, where it can be safely implied. We're adding a choice actively weaken. Yes, please. Let's go step by step and by beat. But here, let me refresh you on the chapter. Because I just modified that. Copy. Chapter 14 back in the line. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do like this. Beat 1. Beat 2. Be a little bit more explicit here. 3. I mean, it could tell it. I mean, it knows what to do, but yeah, I think you find you're gonna have to be a lot more explicit with AIs. I mean, obviously it'll get better to where you don't even need to do that at all, but right now, I always get that thing about, you have leaf and you have leaves. You have beef and you have beeves, believe it or not. Believe it or not, beef referred to a cow or steer, and beeves, whenever you hear somebody say beeves, like it comes up in the Bible that the word beeves, and sometimes if you're like watching an old western or something, they'll say the beeves, or the beeves basically, which is basically plural for beef, and that's a plural for cow. So when they say beeves, it's cows basically. So it's like leaf and leave and um, leaf and leaves, and Anyways, I always assume that dwarves should be spelled VES, right? Because of the dwarf. But I think it's actually dwarfs, like that. Symbols the dwarves. Okay, anyways, let's go ahead and hit enter. It's gonna go. I'll let it go through the step itself. Really, I just wanted an algorithm to do it quick. So if I'm doing it by myself and I'm not even asking the AI, which I'm going to attempt when I work on chapter 13, I'm going to attempt to do that myself just to see if I can do it. Roland and John infiltrate Max's office, free the doors, and then are immediately captured. Step 1, action reaction. Primarily action, but narratively it functions as a setup reversal. The capture is the real payload. Step 2, is there a meaningful choice available? Not really. Any choice about how they sneak in is cosmetic because the outcome capture is fixed. Can a choice affect the story or character state? No, unless you want to track stealth, competence, injury, or suspicion. She explicitly deferred to later phases. Pardon me. Step 4, consequences immediate or delayed. Immediate but predetermined. 5, distinguishable outcomes. No capture must happen. Step 6, do all choices lead to the same outcome? Yes. Does a flavor choice add value? Possibly, but only if it reinforces Roland's competence despite failure or frames the capture as betrayal, bad luck, or overwhelming odds. Okay, conclusion for beat 1. No decision point required. A single flavor choice could work. Bold versus cautious approach, but only if it changes the tone, not events. Be careful. Too much interaction here risks frustrating the player because success is immediately negated. This beat works structurally because it avoids the you failed because you chose wrong trap. Keep it that way. Beat 2, summary, forced labor, coordinated uprising. Action or reaction, reaction transitioning into action. Is there a meaningful choice? No, the uprising. If the uprising doesn't happen, the story stalls. Can a choice affect state? Not phase 1. There, when I said that, it's acting like I can't affect the state at all. What it means is if I affect the state, it has to be throughout the rest of the story, and that's not entirely true either because you can kind of negate it later. In other words, if I let's say I open a chest and I grab something, um, um, now what I grab has to be the same thing. In other words, if there's a sword and a shield, and you pick up the sword, it's still got to be the sword. You can't do either the sword or the shield, right? Because there's no state tracking there. But if I wanted to pick up, let's say, a flashlight, I need a flashlight for something, right? But later on I need something else from that. Um, then you could do all this stuff with the flashlight and then come back and let's say you need the flashlight to turn on the lights in the house, right? So so you grab the flashlight. Now there's other stuff in the dealie, but you can't grab the other stuff. Like there's no choice to grab the other stuff. You grab the flashlight. That's fine. Now you have to go and find the let's say the circuit breaker, right? Or the fuse box or whatever, and you go and replace the fuse, and then you go back to the place where there's the chest with the flashlight or torch, as you might say in the UK. The flashlight. Maybe there's something else in there now that you need. Maybe there's an old blanket, or maybe there's a um, or maybe it's just you need to be able to see in there and you can't see in there, and so you feel your hand feels and it feels what looks to be a flashlight because you can kind of tell it's a round cylindrical and then it's got the button on it, and so once you turn it on, now of course if you can turn it on there you can see everything in there, and so there's that. So that you wouldn't need to do that, but let's just say we want to turn on the lights um, and you need a flashlight. So you need a flashlight to look through the house, turn on the lights, and now when the lights are on, now you can go back into every other room and stuff. Um, so that's okay. So I'm gonna ask it about that. The shingles of the guards must be overpowered. Same outcome, yes. Flavor value. If included, it should reinforce John's role as a coordinator, instigator, or show dwarf solidarity, mining culture. Conclusion for B2, no decision point best handles a tight narrative sequence. If you add interaction, keep it internal. B3, explosion, train reveal, action, reaction, reaction. Meaningful choice, no. Effect state, no. Distinguishable outcomes, same outcome. Flavor, value. B4, caster follows slaves free, he reunites, next object established. Moderate but narrowly scoped. 0 true decision points is correct here. He did force a decision point, weaken urgency, undermine the inevitability of capture, falsely imply player control will not exist. Structurally sound. Okay, so when I said that there's no state tracking, and so you couldn't affect something later by making a choice, that's only partly true. There's no state tracking, meaning if I turn let's see. There, let's say, even though there's no state tracking, I can change the state, but it has to remain until how do I say it? Has to remain until later. For instance, if there's a chest and it has multiple items in it, I can't choose any one of the items. I'm stuck with that item until I get to a new page that requires a new item. So, let's say there's a key somewhere. Well, I can't do that either because you're using the flashlight, so I can't say, you know, here. Let's say there's a chest, and in it is only a flashlight. Okay, let's do it like, let me back up here. Let's say we're in a house with no lights on, and you encounter a chest. No, that isn't a good one. I'm just saying you can find the deals there. So um say you're in a spooky house with no lights on, so it's almost completely dark. You can't decide where to go because you can't see. But in the that's not it either. Oh, doggone it. I'm not coming up with a good example. Let me think. Okay, okay, so you need to get into a room, so you require a key. See if I let's see if I can explain this properly. I can do the lights on, lights off thing though. You do lights on, you cannot do the lights off because it requires the rest of it requires the lights on. That's not right either. Uh, let me think. I could do it with the puzzles example. It's kind of like a tribe example, but it might work. No, I don't know what I'm trying to think of. It's like okay, it's like you can't miss an item and still go on to the next thing. Yeah, if there's an item that you need for something later, you're gonna have to get that item now. Hmm. Let me think for a second. I don't know what to say. Because you can have something that affects something later, but you have to have that thing to affect it later. It's only partly true. You can't have multiple items in a chest that I need later. Take one item and then use it and then come back, get another, take any item I choose, and then use it and then come back to get another item of my choosing. So since there's no loop backs, I couldn't go back to the same chest, to the same page that has the chest with the first item in it. I have to create new pages within the same room using the same chest, but this time with whatever I removed gone. So I have to set that up linearly. Am I making sense? systematic state tracking flags variables, inventory objects that persist and recombine. But there's author-managed linear state progression where each page implicitly encodes what's already happened. Completely valid model for what this actually means in practice. You're not saying nothing can change. You're saying changes can't be revisited or recomputed. They must be baked into the forward structure of the narrative. So instead of one room plus one chest plus multiple visits plus dynamic contents, you do room chest full choice room chest missing item A, or different page, not a variable. Okay. All right. And this is actually not an or, it's an and. It has to be an and here. I carried forward once, never revisited. Choices can't affect is choices can't create a reusable divergence. Branching that reconverges once and then moves on allowed. Later choices are at permanently colored narration allowed. Single use seeded X, therefore the next page reflects X allowed. Reframe how you evaluate. Given this 7-step process, it can be interpreted this way for phase 1, step 3. Can the choice affect story or character state becomes, can the choice justify a unique forward page? Choice is viable. Concrete example, your chest scenario. Valid. Open chest, take torch. Next page describes torch in hand. Open chest, take rope. Next page describes rope in hand. Both paths later reconverge once the item's narrative utility is spent. Invalid. Take item, leave, come back, choose again. Persistent inventory. What this unlocks for you gives you more flexibility. You can do one-time equipment, one-time advantages, alter dialogue. So, yes. Um, let's see here. Now, okay, so, and here's a good example. Copy. Let's clarify a bit more. When you said this, it will actually have to be item A and then item B, not item A or item B. However, you can still do this how do I say it? If you have the inverse choices, that's what I did on several items that required you to have to exercise all options. So if you chose item A, then you grabbed item B. If there was if you chose B, then it grabbed A. So you could still so you still would need both items. In another case, you might grab item 1 and use it, and then the next forward third page would be grabbing item 2. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm trying to get across what I'm trying to get across. I don't even know if anybody that's watching this or listening can do it. Forced exhaustion of options, not optional branching. Structure is actually this corrective model, but you're really doing, instead of chess, pick A or B, move on with only one, you're doing pick A or B. Next page forces acquisition or resolution of the other. So the order is player control, but the set is fixed. That's an important distinction. That's why this works in your constraints. Preserves for only structure, avoids inventory tracking. Yeah. Order choice pattern. Shepherd decision rule. Preview. Method choices, how they sneak. Perspective choices. You can also do it like sequence after sequence, i.e. linearly. Let's say that. So you can still affect things down the road, but it can't be an option. In other words, you can always, to clarify, can always affect future events. What did I just say? I just said it. What did I just say? Oh, I don't know what I was going to say now. So, it was the idea of having it affect something. So, you can affect future events, but you can't have multiple options for that. Let's say in a game you can talk to an NPC and you can either be friendly, neutral, or hostile. So if you've been friendly all this time, and you suddenly go hostile, that's not really what I'm trying to say. If I'm friendly to a character, how to say it? And later, they help me somehow. That's fine. However, I can't choose neutral or hostile for the same feature event. Okay, so wait. I'm talking about a hypothetical game where so if you're friendly to, let's say, a guard, and then later you want to be let in by the same guard, okay, that he'll let you in because you were friendly before. Now, if I choose hostile, he definitely won't let me in later. But in my current game, I can't do this because I'm not keeping track of how my attitude was toward this NPC. I can only make it fixed in this current phase. So I'm stuck with whatever I decide I want to do for the story. And then also, uh, let's say I'm neutral. Um, let's say in a normal game I pick neutral. Well, later on he can decide whether or not I should be allowed to sneak through. And it can be one or the other. But that's only, again, when you can keep track of the state and do a bit of randomness. There's a way I can do random on a decision point, but that's not relevant to this discussion. Um, and actually, I could do a neutral option the same way. The choice wouldn't be friendly, neutral, or hostile, but the only choice would be to be neutral. And then I can give them a blind choice, which makes it seem like it's random. Does that make sense? I might should start using the voice thing. I don't know how much it takes off of the free deal, but start using the voice and talk to it. Maybe we can do that. You're describing the limitation very precisely. Let me restate clearly and cite in the design implications. You cannot support conditional feature behavior based on past player attitude. So designs like friendly guard helps later, neutral guard maybe helps, hostile guard blocks you are impossible unless the attitude is tracked or the interaction is resolved immediately and never referenced again. Since you're not tracking state, future NPC reactions must be fixed by the author, not contingent on the earlier player behavior. That's a hard boundary, which you can still do. You can still affect future events as long as there's only one possible feature and the player's choice affects presentation framework or perceived causality, not logic. So instead of you are friendly, door opens, you are hostile, door stays shut, you're limited to door opens always. but why it opens is framed differently, or door outcome is fixed. Player experiences uncertainty or anticipation beforehand. Your neutral only plus blind resolution idea. This is a valid and well-continuous Christian. What you're really doing is removing attitude as a variable, retaining uncertainty as an experience. So the choice is no longer friendly, neutral, hostile. It becomes engage cautiously, unknown result. The resolution is pre-authored, possibly randomized, but not influenced by prior behavior. This works because player is not promised causal persistence. The uncertainty exists only at the moment of choice. The outcome does not branch the story. That's a legitimate narrative choice, not device, not a cheat. Key distinction, this is the important part. You're separating causal agency. Player choices shape the world from experiential agency. Player choices shape how events are felt. Phase 1 supports the second, not the first. Trying to simulate causal agency without tracking will break coherence. Leaning into experiential agency will not. And basically that's what I'm trying to say though. So when we go back through chapter 14 through each of the beats, we can look at it in that lens, so that you can't say, well, can this affect anything later? Well, yeah, it can, but it's got to stay affected. In other words, it's got to be fixed, right? Okay. Design rule you can safely rely on for this phase. A player choice may influence expectation, tension, or interpretation, not feature availability, NPC disposition, or world state beyond one step. If choice implies this will matter later, people will remember this. The world will react differently long term, but it doesn't belong in phase 1. Okay. Chapter 14 is mostly capture, forced labor, uprising, rescue. These are externally driven events, not socially negotiable ones. Trying to inject persuasion, reputation, or moral stance would be misleading at this stage. Method, order, focus, and momentary uncertainty are appropriate. Persistent attitude is not. You're not missing a system, you're deliberately deferring causal agency to later phases. That's a sound design decision as long as phase 1 never pretends otherwise. Ready? Uh, yes. Okay, so let's go through chapter 14 beat by beat, step by step, to see if more chances for agency present themselves. Given this understanding, refined understanding phase 1 limitations. Back in the Gnome Kingdom, locates Max's office. Roland and John then spot dwarves tied and gagged on the floor. Sneaking in, Roland easily snaps the bonds, pulling them. Roland and John are then surprised and captured by the gnome. Step 1, action reaction. Primarily reaction beat, although there's initial action, sneaking in and freeing the dwarves. Capture is the narrative pivot. Step 2, is there a meaningful choice available? Only possible choice would be how Roland approaches the office or frees the dwarves. Outcome, capture is fixed. So no true branching decision exists, right? Or we should say natural agency, right? Um, can the choice affect story and character state? Phase 1 limits no persistent state. Any choice affects the immediate presentation, not long-term consequences. So the only flavor choices are viable. What? Okay, so the point here is yeah, they can't go in, rescue the dwarves, and then uh, just straight up get away with it. In other words, they have to get caught. That's part of the story that has to get caught. And the choice affects story. Okay, step 4, consequences. Immediate capture occurs in this beat. No delayed impact because the state isn't tracked. Distinguishable outcomes. No, the capture is inevitable. Does the choice make the player feel engaged, informed, or influential? Possible via micro flavor choices. Prioritizes which doors are free first. These affect tone and not outcomes. Now, here's the deal. I would say myself that you could put a decision point in there and show how they free the slaves, or whatever. Um, they still have to free them and they still have to get caught, but that doesn't mean within their actions that they can't choose a way to do it. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Well, okay. But here's where we can kind of um, we're not even bending the rules or breaking the rules. We are working within it. Agency without breaking or bending rules. So since the action is finding the office and then freeing the boards, there are two potential places to add decision points. And this is how I've been designing things all along. It's kind of odd. What I meant to actually make things easier and or simpler turns out to need some, how should I say, need some thinking to make sure it works correctly. And I'm just saying that makes it a possible decision point beat. That's not works on phase. Two micro spots to beat one where agency can exist without breaking the rules. Finding the office, the player can choose a method or path: front entrance, side corridor, stealthy approach, or cautious reconnaissance. Outcome is fixed. They arrive at the office, but the choice shapes tone, pacing, and perception. Freeing the dwarves. The player could prioritize which dwarf to untie first or how quickly or stealthily they act. Again, the result is fixed. Dwarves are freed, but the sequence or descriptive flavor can differ. Single resolution. Once the office is reached, the choice is consumed. No revisits. No future tracking required. Later events. Capture force later uprising do not depend on the method chosen. Adds engagement. Player feels involved, even though plot outcome is predetermined. Critical note: the key is keeping these as flavor sequence choices, not creating any implied causal effect beyond this beat. Otherwise, it risks giving the illusion of long-term agency that phase one cannot support. If you want, we can now move on to beat two. Examine where the similar micro-choice approach applies. Okay, so there's still yeah, yes and no. In other words, you can't have them not get caught, I guess. Because if I do have them get, if I do have them not get caught, then I have to do a thing where, how do I say that? Because that even that would still work. Um, Before going on to beat two, we can also be a bit flexible here too. So the object here is to free everyone, including the dwarves and the slaves. However, okay, but I said that wrong because I'm not thinking about the recapture. Um, do I say that? How do I... Yeah, it's gotta link immediately to the next beat though. I mean, it can't go around beats, so to speak. Let's say, um, how do I do this? Um, you have a choice that looks like a random choice. One leads to freeing the dwarves, the other leads to not freeing. But then, guess what? They get captured anyways. So that didn't affect anything. They both led to the same immediate result. Furthermore, let's see. The same immediate result. But even that's even that is a little more flexible. Look what I mean? This useful trick describes essentially illusory choice. Two or more options appear to matter. Only one outcome is visible, or outcomes converge immediately. Player perceives control or experimentation even though the story outcome is predetermined. Play to beat one. Roland frees the doors first, then captured. Roland hesitates. Doors still freed, then captured. Well, they wouldn't be freed, but they're immediately all captured, and so they're everybody's sent into the mines anyways. Creates agency or engagement without creating real divergence. Supports slavery nuance. Uh, okay, yes. Let's go on to beat 2, please. Okay, let's see what we got here. All right. Films promptly put John, Roland, and the rest to work. After a bit, John signals the doors to overpower the guards. Action or reaction. This is mostly reaction. The characters are forced into labor. The second line introduces a coordinated action uprising, but is still predetermined. Is there a meaningful choice available? Potential microflavor exists. Player could choose how John signals the doors. Player could choose how Roland participates. True branching decision, no, because the uprising occurs regardless. Outcome 6. Can the choice affect the story? No long-term effect. Cannot track persistent immediate narration. Okay. Outcomes, not really. Game player input. Select how they participate in the uprising gives a small sense of agency. Critical assessment for V2. The plot is fully predetermined. Flavor and micro choices work well here, especially if you want the player to feel involved. Example, still the door is a hand gesture code. Self knock, choose quietly to assist, actively lead, observe before acting. Okay. Okay, let's move on to beat 3 then. I probably have a thing where they should be a single beat, which case it's only 3, but it might make it tighter and better as far as that goes. Because regardless of whether they overpower the guards or not, they overpower the guards in the story, but it's still going to happen because the thing that causes that, right? The explosion seems to come from one of the mine walls. When the smoke clears, a train appears to have crashed into the mines. And this is something in another part of the mine, right? And hmm, it's a primary action beat. Characters responding to an external event. No. Explosion train arrival fixed events. No. Phase 1 constraints. No state tracking. This is event is a fixed narrative pivot. Uh, very limited possible flavor. Okay. Critical assessment. No true decision point. That's fine. It's just that's a cutscene. That's a cutscene beat. Okay. Let's move on to beat 4. Gnome guards are easily overpowered after they hear what sounds like an explosion. Slaves get released and start to run out of the mines. Hubert finds Sean and Roland. He shouts for everyone to head to the Batson Belfry. Primary reactionary. The characters are responding to the explosion. The opportunity to escape. Um, Meaningful choice available. Limited possibilities for player choice. The player could choose Roland or John and assist to freed slaves. Player could choose how they react to Hubert's arrival. And honestly, we can also, if I can figure out some things that are story wise, um, then maybe we can learn something about the story or about something. No persistent state. No any choices. Immediate narration. How the scene is described, which characters role emphasizes helping, and how tense the escape feels. Um, possible, possible. To bring to none. Um, no, but I'm thinking if I should possibly rewrite chapter 14 uh, to be a bit tighter and possibly have more decision, more possibilities for these or agency. They prioritize first which doors to free, which path to sneak through. Can make the player feel like they have control without choosing to strap them. Choose how they respond as tension builds. Um, well, I'll see in just a second. And anybody that's listening or watching knows how I work. I don't usually wholly take everything from AI. I just use it as something to help me bounce ideas off of. So I still have to think about this for a second. Um, yeah, there's kind of a thing that I could do too. I could do a thing where they kind of branch off. I haven't actually made it like a dual, like dual beats, like two different things happening. No, that's not how that would work. Oh. Mm-hmm. Okay, so go back, look at Max's office. Oh, okay. Um, um, I'm also going to suggest something that might make it even have less agency. You know, maybe I should go back and revisit 11 and 12, and maybe we should eliminate a chapter. Maybe we should eliminate chapter 14 because of kind of what it is, and that would bring it back down to my like two chapter story arc. And that's the idea that John and Roland's plans were to get captured, so they're thrown in with the rest of the slaves so they can overpower, so they can was motivate them into escaping. That is, they knew that Hubert was going to come in on a flying train, and they were going to use that to distract the guards long enough to overpower them. Plan to get captured, and then the whole mind beat becomes deliberately constrained. Every choice the player could make is really just part of the plan. Microplayer choices still work, but only in how the player experiences the plan, not in whether it succeeds. For example, how Roland acts while he's pretending to be captured, which Dorothy prioritizes up in first, how he positions himself during the uprising. No branching outcomes are possible. Success is guaranteed because the plan relies on the scripted distraction of arriving on the train. Any choices that normally risk failure would break the story logic. This can actually tighten the story because the capture is intentional. You can streamline beat 1 and 2, focus on tension, flavor level, micro decisions. Um, the So ironically, the plan capture approach reduces real agency, but can make the story feel tighter, more cohesive. Um, Not yet, because I'm also further um, um, also thinking of doing something a bit more drastic. Is it possible we could cram all of these events into a single story beat? Or maybe two, depending on a few other things that I won't mention just yet. Alright, the entire mind sequence is one continuous event. All actions would be described in sequence. Flavor choices could still exist, but they'd be embedded within the narrative. Those tighter pacing, faster playthrough, less room for narrative drag, suspense and payoff hit quickly, easier to keep all events in player forward sequence. Cons, less room for perceived player agency. Let's do this yet. Because the reason for combining them into one or two is so that I can effectively merge it with chapters 11 and 12. I'll have to go back through those chapters and see if I can effectively compress them a bit. If it's two beats, then I can have 2 5-beat chapters. If one, then I might just merge that with chapter 12. Makes sense. A structural approach. Compressing chapter 14 gives you flexibility in how you merge it with chapters 11 and 12. Gives you a natural midpoint to align with chapters 11 and 12. You preserve a few flavor choice points. Player agency is minimal. Any flavor choices would need to be embedded very compactly. See where they can be tightened without losing tension or clarity. Then decide whether you want to the final sequence to be 3 compressed chapters or 2 chapters, depending on pacing, flavor, choice opportunities. Okay, I will do that. In fact, my break is coming up here in 10 minutes. So I'll do a little reviewing and then return after my break to maybe discuss it with you. Okay. Sounds good. Use the break to review chapters. Think about where the progression makes sense. Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks. All right. Now, I realize we got these 4 chapters. In fact, we actually crammed we crammed this speed in here that I had put as its own chapter originally. Okay, Chapter 11. Max arrives at the administration castle aboard a transport train as Tex activate the machine for the first time. First at half power, okay. Thousands of gates are open simultaneously and shut off. That's just a little. That's okay. Near the dwarf mines, Roland, the half dwarf, half giant, approaches the entrance. An old dwarf, Roland knows, stumbles out and tells him his dad is trapped in Gnome Kingdom. See, I can make uh, an alternative Quicksilver Chronicles arc here, um, so that it takes the choice things back out, and then I can see. Maybe that's how I should do it. In fact, let's think that's how I will do it. Let's go ahead and we're gonna go ahead and save this. Make sure everything is saved like it's supposed to be. Um, then we're going to go ahead and save as Quicksilver Chronicles Alt, like that. And Alt is just simply going to Eldorf Roman knows sometimes his dad's trapped in the Gnome Kingdom. Searches for the secret entrance in the Gnome Kingdom. While in there, Roland notices all kinds of people and creatures working the mines. He spots a giant chain of one of the machines that he can't identify and starts walking towards him. Roland asks the giant if he's his dad. They talk a bit, and the giant confirms it. Learns Max. Uh, Chapter 12, the Gnome Kingdom. Roland looks around, starts asking. That's in the free account. Roland tells him, okay. And actually, I just spotted something here that helps one thing, and that is that these aren't set up, and these are all set up. So this is actually can be part of this. I know it's 6 lines, but at the same time, it's enough to be its own story beat. Okay, but we'll leave that at the moment. Okay, back to the mines. Um, I just identified um, chapter 12 beats 3 and 4 can effectively be the same beat. It's just a setup for what happens next. So Hubert sends John and Rowan into the mines. Him and Sir William fly towards the castle, and the Black Knight sees them in the air. It works as its it works as a single beat. Okay, so let me continue. I'm taking my break now, but we'll be back in about an hour. Okay. Thanks again. I'll just be polite here. Okay. So I want to say thank you for watching and or listening to part one, and we're getting things done here. I identified kind of where it was weak. Chapter 14 is essentially a long cutscene. Now there's a lot of stuff packed into it, so it makes it a little bit more challenging. And before I was saying I like the idea of the two chapter story arcs, right? And so I had 3 chapter story arc here, but I think I can effectively compress them down into 2 chapters, and then it also means that being more dense, there's more chance of putting some player agency in there. So, anyways, yeah, thanks for watching part one, and I will see you in about an hour. Thank you for watching part one.